Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Sheryl, for those of you who doesn't know me yet. So I'm the 7 years Amazon seller, and I've been coaching since 2022. So I'm an Amazon coach as well. I teach beginners, those who wants to know and learn about Amazon selling. I do teach that for Canada and also for selling in the US, niching on Canadian products. So today I'm hosting this webinar thanks to Carmela. So Carmela is my CPA, and she is so kind enough to again lend her time to us for us to know about some things about bookkeeping and at the same time answer all your questions. Okay, so before I introduce Carmela, I want to let you know that this is gonna be recorded and will gonna be given to you as a replay. So you're going to receive this in your email. So Carmela will also be sharing a lot of several documents or file that you might be able to use when you're doing your own taxes or bookkeeping, I mean. So I will share that as well via email. So expect an email from me after this. I know that there's more than 100 people who sign up, so there's many people who just keep on going, but I'm gonna give the floor to Carmela already for her to start our webinar. Hi, Carmela.
Hi, Cheryl. Hi, everyone. I'm glad I'm here tonight because I've got a few, I call them little secrets, although some of these things might be very common for us in the field. But for people who kind of want to do their own bookkeeping for their Amazon selling business or for any other business, really, these tips will really help.
Okay, so thank you so much. So would you mind introducing yourself, and then maybe we can start our
Sure.
webinar already.
Okay. Well, Carmela from Aurora, Ontario. I've been a CPA for about 23 years now, for Amazon sellers specifically since 2019. Maybe some of you might already know that back in 2016, I was an Amazon seller as well. I was trying to get that sort of going, on the side, like a lot of you are doing. Um, I found it very frustrating, to be honest. We didn't do very well. So for 3 years, we did that on the side. And I just figured, you know what? I love accounting more than Amazon selling. So I decided to at least put the time and effort that I put into the Amazon selling in terms of the tax reporting and the bookkeeping, all that stuff. I thought, you know what, at least I can apply it to what I do day to day. And so that's why I kind of turned my focus to Amazon sellers and now other e-commerce businesses.
Okay, thank you, Carmela, for the introduction. So for those of you guys who have questions, okay, just type it in the chat box. So Carmela, it's your turn to do your lecture tonight.
Okay. Well, I won't call it a lecture because that sounds terrible. I'm not going to tell anybody what to do. These are just tips that you should be doing if you want to avoid costly mistakes. Because little mistake things that feel that are just small mistakes could actually turn into something bigger. So I got 10 of them. So we'll go through one by one. So the first one I see a lot is people who are registered for GST or HST, depending where you are in Canada. They tend to forget that those seller fees that you pay every month, the thousands of dollars sometimes, you are charged GST on that. So you should be claiming those back. So that's money that could go into your pocket. Now, this only applies, of course, to people who are registered for the GST or the HST. So if you're not registered, then this tip isn't really for you. You just want to make sure that you are expensing those fees. Otherwise, of course, you're paying too much tax. That's the bottom line. The second one is updating your tax settings in your seller account. and the product tax code. So a lot of my clients, will come to me and say that they've got their GST number now and they put it into their tax settings and they're good to go. Yes, that should be enough, but we found through several audits that putting your 9-digit number isn't enough. So Amazon is still not charging or, in collecting the proper amount of tax. So that's going to actually have to come out of your pocket because CRA will say, well, it wasn't charged on those sales. And regardless of whether it was charged or not, you actually have to pay CRA. So if you haven't collected that GST on those sales, that money is coming out of your pocket. So what I always say is to add your 9-digit business number, so your GST HST number, you add that into your tax settings, but you also have to go to all your active listings and choose the product tax code. So if you go to, I believe it's in the inventory listing, you choose edit listing, and then there's a box with a drop-down menu. That's for the product tax code. So if it's a taxable item, at the very least, you have to put A_gen_tax. And if it's not taxable, then it's the A_gen_no tax. Now, that's just your general stuff. Sometimes, children's clothing, that has a different tax rate. And I believe there's a product tax code specifically for that. So you can look at the items in the drop-down menu. If you can't see something that's specific to what you're selling, choose the general one. And how I sort of advise my clients on whether something is taxable or not is when you purchased it, if you paid the GST or the HST on that item, then you need to charge that sales tax to your customer. So that's kind of like the guideline that I use. The number 3, this, I find a lot of people will, if you're using QuickBooks or Wave Accounting or Xero, some kind of bookkeeping software, I find that when you transition from a sole prop to a corporation, people will just sort of continue doing the bookkeeping in the same data file. So, you've got your sole proprietorship income and expenses, and then all of a sudden you become a corporation, and now you just continue in the same set of books. And that's actually very wrong because things are accumulating and they actually go into your corporation, which is not the right way to be doing that. So, in order to untangle something like that, we had to do something similar for one of our clients. It took the bookkeeper about 15 hours to untangle that and to create a new set of books for the corporation. So that could cost you a lot of money. If you're doing it yourself, then it wouldn't cost you money, but you have to make sure that you're separating it properly so that when it comes time to do your tax return, you're reporting the correct amounts. So yeah, it could cost you someone to have to clean it up for you, like your accountant or your bookkeeper. So that's something really important, always to keep your sole prop and your corporation separate. If you're just operating as a sole proprietorship, then you go ahead and use the same set of books, right? Year after year. Even though as a sole prop, we file from January to December, you still use the same file. You wouldn't start a new data file for every single year. Okay. Secret number 4, like I said, I call these secrets, but secret number 4 is recording your sales from your Amazon business from your payouts. So the money that goes into your bank account every 2 weeks or however, you request the payouts, those amounts are not your sales. That's what you get after there's all these fees deducted from your sales. So the correct way to record your sales is by the Amazon sales summary. So I think, Cheryl, you've got a copy of the list that I have. So from your sales summary, that is where you pick up your sales, your gross sales, your Amazon fees, and any HST or GST that's been collected on your behalf and paid out to you. So, as I guess a Canadian business, you are required to report gross sales, not your net sales. Because when you're filing your HST or GST return, the sales reported in your business have to match the sales reported on your GST return. And so, just as an example, if your gross sales were $10,000, but recorded 5,000 because after fees, your sales were $5,000 or your net income was $5,000, CRA is going to expect HST or GST based on the 5,000. But really what you should be remitting is on the 10,000, right? So it gets this is, I'm going deeper into like the accounting and the tax end of things, but really what you should know from a bookkeeping perspective is to just record from your gross sales, and that's your Amazon sales summary. Everything is on that one summary that you need. Your payouts, you might ask, where do I post those things? So payouts actually go into, we create a reserve account. So you know how every payout has an amount that they're holding back, right? Because Amazon doesn't pay you 100% of the money right away, right? They hold back. So you create a different account. So as you get paid, you put it into that account. Okay, so again, without going too much into the bookkeeping side of things, just know that you need your sales summary. And that's actually one of the items on the do-it-yourself bookkeeping checklist that I created to give to Cheryl. So every month, have a look at the checklist, and those are the items you need every single month to update your books. So number 5 is using bookkeeping software. As a sole proprietor, you can get away with just using a spreadsheet because everybody seems to really like spreadsheets. And the reason why sole props can get away with it is because all you have to report at the end of the year are your income and your expenses. CRA doesn't want to know anything about your assets or your liabilities. There's no equity. But for a corporation, it's a little bit more involved. You actually have to file a balance sheet and a profit and loss statement. And one of the easiest ways to create this balance sheet is through the use of bookkeeping software. So something like QuickBooks or Wave Accounting, those softwares, they make it really, really easy to do your reporting. Now, using the bookkeeping software also helps you to make sure that you're not missing anything. Because if you've got a couple of spreadsheets and you've got, your expenses in one, your income in another, assets in some other spreadsheet, how do you bring all of that together into a balance sheet? A lot of times when people are doing their own bookkeeping, they might not necessarily know what a balance sheet is. So creating a balance sheet from spreadsheets when you're not really familiar with it could create lots of, mistakes. And, CRA is gonna, come knocking when the balance sheet in the tax return doesn't make sense. So if you use bookkeeping software, you can almost get away with not really knowing what a balance sheet is because the software creates it from the numbers that you enter, from the bookkeeping you do every single month. You press a button, you've got a balance sheet. So that's a must for corporations. Number 6, inventory. Um, so inventory, when you purchase a bunch of inventory for sale, you can't expense it right away because you didn't sell it. So it sits in your house or at the warehouse, so the FBA warehouse. It sits as an asset. You own those goods, but you haven't sold any. So right now, if you sold 5,000, if you paid $5,000, that is an asset. And at the end of each month, it's a good habit to get into taking a quick inventory of what you have on hand. Because if you're the type of person who expenses everything as you buy it, you're overstating your cost of goods sold. And by overstating the cost of goods sold, you're actually understating your profit. So, you might be thinking, oh, I'm not really doing so well. I have actually some clients will say to me, because I ask them, it's like, do you have a profit? Oh, no, 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 we have a loss. And so after I take a look at their books, they haven't recorded their ending inventory yet. So after we do that, they actually have a big profit, right? So they might be thinking, I have a loss, I don't owe tax, and then they might not get their tax return done on time, thinking, well, I have a loss. CRA is not going to care. They're not going to charge me any late filing penalty. But when I'm finished with it and I've recorded the ending inventory, which is the correct thing to do, your profit now is going to get taxed. And because you're late, you're going to have a late filing penalty. So I like to do it at the end of every month. That way, when you're using those reports in your QuickBooks, let's say, when you're using them to manage your business, which you should be doing, you're looking at accurate numbers. You're not looking at a loss when in fact you should be you have a profit, but you don't know this because you haven't dealt with your ending inventory. One of the reports on the list, the Amazon reports list, is the ending inventory. So I would say get into the habit of downloading that report on the first or second of every month for the following month. So, March 2nd or 3rd, you would download it for February 28th. And then that gets recorded in your bookkeeping software. So number 7, don't rely on unverified advice. So there's a lot of information out there on the internet. And sometimes the information can come from, people who have businesses like yours, but their situation is different than yours. Their personal situation is different. Their personal financial situation is different. When an accountant advises you, they can't advise you unless they know everything. So they need to know your personal situation, what your finances are, what your business is doing. Then they can give you the proper advice. So if, you're in, a Facebook group and someone says, well, no, this is what I do, and I never have to pay tax, or I don't pay a lot of tax, or whatever, that situation may not apply to you. So you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt and say, okay, well, that's interesting that you say that. Let me get it verified, right? So that's where having like a 30-minute phone call with me will help at least, clarify some things. And I don't know if you mentioned in your groups, Sheryl, but the 30 minutes with me, like your first 30 minutes is free. And I tend to I tend to talk a lot on those calls, but I try and give as much information as I possibly can so that you're set up to continue your business or start your business on the right foot. The eighth one, this one's really interesting. Now we've come across it in QuickBooks because that's what 90% of my clients use. So there's something called rules in QuickBooks. Now, rules can be a great thing. What they're meant to do is to automatically record or post certain transactions. So let's say you go to Petro-Canada, twice a week or twice a month, and you gas up your car. So you can set up a rule that every time that QuickBooks sees that Petro-Canada entry, they know that, okay, it goes to fuel. So they calculate the GST and it automatically goes to that account. You don't even see it. The trouble is when, let's say, you start taking money out of your business, or you're doing retail or online arbitrage and you're buying some things from Walmart, but then you start mixing in some personal stuff. So you let's say you bought some goods for resale one time, and that $100 you said, okay, whenever you see Walmart, it is cost of goods sold, it's inventory. But then, one time or twice, you go to Walmart and you buy some personal stuff for yourself. Well, now QuickBooks thinks that Walmart purchase is still cost of goods sold, because the rule is set up so that every time it sees Walmart, it's cost of goods sold. So there's no way to distinguish, to say, well, sometimes Walmart is personal, sometimes Walmart is cost of goods sold. And so what we see is a lot of things that are miscategorized. A lot of things are missed. So you need to be careful when you're setting up the rules. If the rules in QuickBooks are for, like, let's say, I'm just trying to think of a place where you might always buy inventory. So let's say Canadian Tire, you never ever shop there personally. So everything coming from Canadian Tire is for resale. Then you can set up a rule in QuickBooks to say every time you see Canadian Tire, 100% it's always cost of goods sold or inventory. So if there's ever a possibility that it could be a personal amount, or, for example, as a shareholder of your corporation, or even as as a sole prop, if you're taking money out, sometimes people call that, a corporation. Whenever they see your name and then a withdrawal, they might say, oh, well, it's automatically a dividend. But sometimes you might be paying yourself back for money that you've put into the company. So really, this sounds like a lot, and it probably, it is. But what I'm saying is, if when you're setting up your rules in QuickBooks, you just have to go careful to make sure that you're not duplicating or miscategorizing entries. So we have number 9. So a lot of people will wait till tax time to get their books up to date. This is fine, but you're causing yourself, I think, a lot more stress than you need. And nobody needs more stress these days. But if you do it regularly, so if you say to yourself, okay, every month, especially with the help of the little checklist that I've created, every month I'm going to update my books. Then what you can do is have a look at that month and see, well, how did I do? Where can I change things? Where did I spend a lot of money? If you do it at the end of the year, you're not managing your business, because all you're doing is you're putting money, to buy goods for resale. You're selling, and I mean, that's wonderful. But if you're not looking at your finances regularly, you're not really managing your business. And you're not, at the end of the year, you can't change things that has happened, right? Like, some people will say, oh, I didn't realize, like, I was spending that much money on, category X, whatever that X is, office supplies, let's say. But if you were looking at it through the year, then you could see that you spent, wow, like was a big month. I spent a lot of office supplies for some reason. You can at least be aware of it and change it. So, you could just, you might miss some things at the end of the year. Tax time is a crazy time. It's an emotional time for everybody, because nobody likes to pay taxes. Some people are scared. So, waiting till tax time, you are just, I think, increasing the risk of mistakes and certainly lots of stress. The last thing I just want to say before I, answer your questions is you should, I think, do a little bit of research, educating yourself on what bookkeeping is, how you can do it. Can you do it yourself? Should you do it yourself? Should you hire somebody else? A lot of people they do think that bookkeeping is basically connecting your bank feed to the QuickBooks and we're uploading all your receipts to QuickBooks. That isn't bookkeeping. It's part of it, but there's a whole process every month that you need to reconcile and ensure that all the information in your QuickBooks or in your Wave, in your spreadsheet, that all this information is accurate, that there's no duplications, you haven't missed anything. The reason why we reconcile the bank account, we reconcile credit cards, is to ensure that we capture every single expense that you're entitled to, right? So you don't want to miss any expenses because that will cost you tax in the end, right? And we all want to minimize tax. That's what, business owners want. We want to pay the least amount of tax. So, we do offer, my office offers one-on-one training. So we usually train on QuickBooks or Wave. Those are the two softwares that we use. And we do it in 1-hour sessions. So you can, sign up for as many as you need. But I find that, and it's not a course, right? It's not a bookkeeping course. You're not going to be a certified bookkeeper after that, but you'll know the basics. So that way, you know how to enter your expenses, your sales, and reconcile the accounts. So we're always happy to help. Of course, during tax time, so, mid-March to mid-May, we don't do many of these trainings just because it gets pretty hectic for us. But other than that, we're happy to help.
Thank you so much, Carmela, for sharing all those. Okay, before I read the questions of most
Sure.
people, so I'm going to ask you some of my personal questions because I think it can also help them to understand. For those of you who are still here, you can type all your questions on the chat box and I will read it one by one to Carmela. Okay, so okay, so I just want to emphasize what you said regarding the sole prop and corporation. So one of the biggest mistakes is they combine it instead of separating them, right? Correct? So basically, if you
That's right.
are in sole proprietor and then you end up opening a corporation, the taxes needs to be separate. One tax for sole prop and one tax for corporation, and you
Right.
cannot mix them in one software if you're planning to do it. So you need to file separately on those two companies, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so just to be clear, because I know that a lot of my students usually, so I show them our videos from before, like, all the interviews, and they know that if they're starting to earn money, that they don't need to spend on their personal expense. They can start the corporation already so that they would get, one of the benefits is to get tax lower. So
For sure.
yeah, so separate, it needs to be filed separately. So now with the bookkeeping software, so this is a common questions actually that I get to a lot of from a lot of people. So which one would you recommend? Like if they want to end up using a software, do you have any recommendation on what software to use? Because I've read before some, like they say, when I was choosing, some say, oh, this one, yes, it's free, but it's messed up, they don't pick it up properly. So I got scared with that. So I stick with QuickBooks. So what would you recommend?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been using QuickBooks for 23 years, right? So not QuickBooks Online, of course, because that wasn't introduced till, a while after. But, my preference is QuickBooks. But I do also suggest Wave. So I have a handful of clients who will use Wave because there's a free version. Before, I think a year ago, it was all free. Now, of course, they got smart, right? And they're like, oh, people can pay for this stuff. So if you're selling on .ca, so you're dealing in Canadian currency only, Wave is free. And it will do the same thing that QuickBooks does. So, it produces your balance sheet. Personally, it's not a favorite of mine. Just the interface is different than QuickBooks, but otherwise it does the same thing. If you are selling in the US or, in Mexico or in the UK, you'll have to kind of go one level up. And I believe it's $20 a month. So that way you can deal with the foreign currency. But, my preference is QuickBooks. But I think, I've seen Xero. One of my clients uses Xero. They all do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as it's a reputable one, right? Not something that, I don't know, like it's very obscure. Go with something that's a little bit more mainstream. And the ones that I've heard of are Xero, QuickBooks Online, and Wave.
Mhm. But if you're sole proprietor, can they still use just a plain worksheet to work on, since they don't wanna like subscribe to anything? Is that
Yeah, for sure. I always say, like, we actually have a template. It's nothing, crazy, but it's the basics. Again, all I need are the basics. So it has a spot for your income and it's per month so that you can do your monthly bookkeeping, right? So a spreadsheet, as long as it's in a format that's fairly easy for you or for your accountant to take from the spreadsheet into a tax return. Because
Mhm.
sometimes, people have one spreadsheet and then they have another one, and you kind of like have to figure out and create another spreadsheet to bring it all together, right?
Mhm.
So that's why I just did this Excel template. That way my clients can kind of give it to me all in the same format.
Okay, so I guess it's exclusively for your clients, right?
I thought did I share it with you at one point?
I don't think so, but if you
I
can
can
share,
share it
that
with
would be
you.
good. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, we're
I'll
so
just
lucky,
make a note.
guys. Okay, so I'm gonna ask Carmela to do that. So for all of you who are watching and who signed up for this, I will give it to you. I will send you an email for all the documents that Carmela is sharing to us. So wait for that email. And so so I know that with me personally, I send you a worksheet, right? Like online, and then I videotape
Yeah.
myself and I tell you like what it is for.
Yeah.
Is it helpful? Would you think like that's helpful for them, like to give instruction through video, so at least you understand what's in there? Like,
Oh, for sure. Because, I don't know what you're thinking when you're putting that spreadsheet together. You know,
mm-hmm,
so when I look at it, most times I can figure out because over time I get to know my clients. And so I know how they all work. Right. So, but sending a video with it, that does help. I've yet to listen to yours because I'm not working on that yet. But when I do, I think last year you sent the same thing with a video.
yes, yes.
So yeah.
I get used to it with my VA. So and I found it like that it's easier to communicate with that. So for you guys who want to do that, so basically I use Loom, or you can do Zoom, record yourself, so at least your accountant have an idea
Mhm.
on what your worksheet is, right? Because for me it's like I
Yeah,
might be inputting it here. I thought it's clear, but then maybe they don't understand it. So I like to make it clear for them. Okay. Another
sure.
question is okay, downloading the inventory report. So what
Mhm.
if you only download once a year? Is there a problem with that? Because I know that I do that as well. So
Yeah.
you said the advantage of doing monthly, but will it affect your business so much with just doing it once a year? you really highly get recommend monthly?
Well, yeah, doing it once a year is the minimum, right? Because you
Mm-hmm.
have to report it for tax.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, what's going to happen is every month you do your bookkeeping, right? So it's not 100% accurate, but you're doing your bookkeeping every month. Then at the end of the year, this ending inventory gets recorded, and it makes it all right, to file on the tax return. The disadvantage I find of once a year is if you're actually looking at your reports every month to manage your business, to make business decisions, you're basing those decisions on inaccurate information.
I
So,
see.
that's not ideal,
Yeah. So
right?
you
Because
recommend really doing bookkeeping every single month?
if every month is a bit much, every quarter at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
Certainly if you're registered for GST or HST, and you let's say have to file your GST return every month or every quarter, that's how often you should be doing your bookkeeping.
Okay. Thank you so much. And QuickBooks. So you are mentioning about how sometimes they end up buying for personal things and ending up mixing up with the business. So my question is it a good idea to just use a credit card solely for business? So for example, especially this one, this is a big question, but I know I personally do this, but some people are saying, oh, can I use my, let's say, Canadian Tire credit card? So the Canadian Tire credit card,
Mhm.
usually we get it for points because there's a lot of good points that you can
Yeah.
get when you're using Canadian Tire credit card, but it's a
Okay.
personal credit card. So if you are sole proprietor or corporation, can you use that to do business? Like, is that allowed, or it needs to be just business credit card?
No, I mean, as a sole prop, of course, it's in your name anyway, right?
Mm,
And there's no concern with, buying your goods on that credit card because
mm-hmm.
it's just a sole prop. But for a corporation, ideally, it would be great to have a credit card in the corporation's name. Now, of course, when you start your corporation, the bank or the credit card provider wants to see, your financial statements. Well, as a new company, you have none. So they're less likely to give you a credit card in the corporation's name. So in that situation, I would say, dedicate one card or two cards, right? Strictly for business use. So it's your personal card, but all you put on that card are expenses for the business, whether it's goods for resale, your Keep a subscription, all that stuff. Because that makes it easier for yourself when you're bookkeeping or for your bookkeeper, because they don't have to go in and say, okay, well, can you highlight all the business expenses? Right? If you say, no, that card is strictly for business, then it just makes it so much easier, right? And if you're audited, the CRA isn't going to start, digging into your personal stuff. They'll stick with business, right? Because that's what they're auditing.
Yeah. So basically, you can use your personal credit card, but you need to use it solely for the business.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. Okay, now my all my questions are answered. I'm going to start asking you with
Okay.
our audience questions. So first thing first is how to deal with taxes if we are selling both in the USA and Canada. I guess it's very general, but maybe you can answer that.
Yeah. So if you are a Canadian, then you report all your income here in Canada and you pay taxes here in Canada. So whether you sell in the States, in Mexico, the UK, all that gets reported on your either your personal tax return if you're a sole prop or your corporate tax return. Now, if you sell in the US, you may be required to fill out forms. So it's you don't pay tax in the States, but the IRS wants to know that you're in their country. And again, I don't deal with cross-border, but I know that a lot of people they'll talk about, getting an EIN number. as soon as you have these numbers, you have to file those papers. So it's not like, well, I didn't do a whole lot of business in the States. Well, the IRS knows you now, right? You've got your EIN number. And so you do have to file these forms, and not filing them is a hefty penalty. So even though you don't have to pay tax, so it's basically like an information return. If you don't file them on time, there's big penalties. So
Oh,
if you're selling in the States, speak with someone, who knows that the tax stuff for US.
okay, so I actually have a video on that on my YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys want to check it out, he's
Yeah.
also like actually he's recommended by Carmela to me. So he's a cross-border CPA, so you can watch his video for more information on that. So Carlos said I started 2 months ago. I was under the impression that Amazon collected and remitted HST so that I didn't have to worry about it since my sales are way under 30K. Is this not the case?
Are you registered for the GST or HST?
He's I
Okay. I
remitted
can
it.
I can do
That's true. Okay.
so let's say you are not registered for the GST or the HST, then Amazon collects and remits on your behalf, right? So there's no obligation for you on that end. But as soon as you register for GST, even if your sales are below the 30,000 threshold, you are responsible to remit to CRA. So Amazon has to charge and collect for you, but you have to pay CRA. So that's why putting your 9-digit number in the tax settings and updating your product tax codes, that's why that's so important.
Okay, thank you for that. That's very clear. Okay, so can you talk about the taxes charged to clients? So if your gross income is over 30, what to do with that amount? Do we remit that to CRA and the taxes we paid is tax deductible? I guess you made it clear, right? So you just answered that question as well. What are some expense people forget to claim on their taxes? So what are the common mistakes, I guess, like that they tend to forget?
Yeah, there's so as an e-commerce business, some of the expenses that a regular business might deduct, like meals, wouldn't apply. So this isn't really the question, but I'll get to that. Meals expenses, unless you're meeting with your suppliers, there's no way that you can deduct these meals expenses. So that's an important thing because during audits they're disallowed. But the things that people tend to miss are vehicle expenses or their office and home, right? You use your house, your apartment, you use your garage. You have to, calculate what portion of your home you use for business, and you can deduct that. So those are the two that I find that are missing usually. We
Mhm.
always seem to have to, ask the clients like, well, did you use your vehicle, right? Retail arbitrage. If you're going around the stores picking up the goods, selling, going to pick up supplies. So vehicle and office and home, those are the two.
So how about those personal expenses in the house, like for example, electricity, water, rental of the furnace,
Yeah, the water
insurance?
heater.
Yeah, yeah, those kind of
Yeah,
are those
yeah.
deductible as well, part of them because you're using the house as your office, right?
Right. So if, let's say, you determine that 10% of your home is business, then 10% of your utilities, property tax, your rent, all that gets deducted, whether you're a sole prop or a corporation. So it goes for both.
So anything that payable to run the house, that's
Yeah.
considered, right? Okay, so for gas, we can just use the percentage started by CRA if you don't want to record the mileage and how much is it.
Sorry, say
Um,
that again.
Basically they're saying so for the gas, we
Mm-hmm.
can use the percentage started by CRAs. Maybe CRA is giving a number of percentage, like if you don't want to
Uh,
record the mileage, is this correct? And how much is it? So basically he's asking if you can, I'm not sure with that.
Yeah, so there's like a short form and a long form that you can do. Um, so the long form is basically tracking your mileage, right? Everywhere you go, your business mileage. The other one, I believe on the CRA website, there is the calculation. I mean, I don't have it memorized. So that way you don't have to keep track of everything. You can just do the calculations to get your percentage that you're going to deduct.
Where can you
Yeah.
find this information in case they want to look at it?
Yeah, I
CRA
can send
website?
you the link. Yeah, I'll send you the link.
Okay, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
it'll be on the CRA website. Unless I actually see it on the CRA website, don't don't always think that the information is correct. Right. At
So it
least
needs
with the
to be
CRA
direct.
website, we have something to go to. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much. Let's see. Another one question is, okay. Nasrat, so asking about HST, even if it, do we have to collect and remit HST even if our total sales is under 30K? So Carmela already respond to that, that if you're not registered yet, then Amazon will remit for you. If you're registered, you are, liable to remit. Okay, so what are some CRA red flags when doing taxes?
So when you're doing like income tax returns or sales tax returns or both.
So I guess maybe you can, we'll
Do
say
it.
just
Let's say
regular
income
tax,
tax.
yeah, income tax.
Yeah, so CRA, like the people at CRA are not looking through your tax return themselves, right? They run them through these computers. So, you want to make sure that from year to year, you're consistent. That let's say your, office supplies didn't go, three times as much as the year before. Some things like that, could be flagged. For a sole prop, they zero in on the vehicle expenses and the home expenses because they know people want to expense as much as they can. So some people, I say that they're a little greedy, right? I had someone say to me that 100% of her home was for business. And so, I mean, I had to say, I don't think that's, you cook in the house, you sleep in the house, so we need to be reasonable, right? So the same with those are the two places where CRA will zone in. So make sure that the calculations are correct and you're being reasonable and consistent through, year to year. With corporations, not only those two, but they also look at your shareholder account, right? Because they know people want to use their business to fund their personal life, right? And not pay tax
Mhm.
on it. So that's something that they look at.
Okay, thank you, Carmela. So Lindsay is asking a question about lead list, but I'm not gonna answer that here. Lindsay, you can post it in our Facebook group because that's not about taxes. Will only answer questions about taxes. So one of her question though is when we dispose items, how do we make it a loss? Like, do we consider it is even as a loss when you, for example, one of the issue is um we dispose because number one, it becomes unsellable, or number two, like we're not allowed anymore to sell them, right? We got gated suddenly and then it's considered unsellable. Can we consider it as a loss of the business, Carmela?
Yeah. So, because if we're doing the inventory route, right, and you're recording your inventory as you buy it, and then your cost of goods sold as you sell it, if there's an item in your ending inventory that you can't sell anymore, then you would expense that. So yes, you can write that off for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
um Ethan is asking, what is the right way to do mileage tracking by spreadsheet? Like, what information do we need to input, such as date, time, start, location? Uh, what's the most important thing that you're looking for when they're recording it manually?
Yeah, so I mean, even if you're tracking your mileage, you want to check what your starting odometer says and your ending. So depending on your fiscal year, but for sole props, it's January to December. You'll need the date to and from, the purpose of the trip, and the kilometers, right? That you drove. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's the one thing. As soon as you get picked for a review or an audit, they'll ask for a mileage log.
Okay. And Marielle is asking if our company general partnership was just created in January 2025, do we have to file taxes in April 2025 or will our first tax file in April 2026?
April
Yeah.
2026.
So what
Yeah.
if it's December 2024? They they s- they started December 2024 and they didn't make money yet. Is Do they
Mhm.
need to file already for 2024?
Yeah, they do because you have expenses, right? Like if there was absolutely no activity, then no. But if you had some expenses to get your business started, then you want to report those because those expenses, the loss gets carried forward, right?
Yes.
So, yeah,
So for
you would.
example, September they started and then they bought the course and they did this, but then they
Right.
didn't make money yet. Still file it
Mhm.
because it will be considered carry forward. All the loss will be carried forward to the next year
Yes.
when you start making money. So that's a very
Yeah.
good information because a lot of people, I remember when I was new, I also did not, I think, because
Yeah.
I didn't know, right? That's a very good information. So what document do I need from Amazon Seller Central in order to file my corporation taxes? AV, I have all the actually I did not know if you see it, Carmela, but I actually recently did a video on the all the how to pull out the reports,
Oh, good.
screenshotting
Okay.
everything. I'll share it with you if you want to share it to your clients, but that's everything that you need is in there already. Maybe I can ask Carmela to review it and see if we still need
Sure.
anything. But basically, it's the list that you gave me. You ask me
Yeah.
all the time as well, and then how to pull out the reports. That's what I did. But yes,
Yeah.
AV, it's in the YouTube channel. So search for Cheryl Marcinek, and you will find the recent post there for on how to get all the documents needed. Okay, so hey, Cheryl, I have to. Okay, another one. Okay, I just Carmel, there's several questions. Number one, I just want to clarify about the taxes. I am in Saskatoon. We have a PST and GST here. For the PST, will that be charged to operational expense? If not, where will that be charged? Let's do one by one question on this particular.
Yeah, so Amazon is responsible for collecting the PST on the sales. So you're not necessarily remitting that tax to the Saskatchewan government. What you do have to be aware, though, is you have to self-assess on your PST returns. So that means if you purchase something, let's say outside of your province, and you were not charged PST on it, you actually have to self-assess on that PST return and pay the PST on that purchase that you were not charged. I don't know if that's clear, but yeah, Manitoba and Saskatchewan have a self-assessment requirement. So although you're not reporting your PST that you collected on sales because Amazon is doing that for you, they have to do it for you. You might have this self-assessment. So you want to, contact the provincial government and they'll walk you through it.
Okay, thank you. And second question, last year we had some few groceries that Amazon restricted us to sell and we weren't able to return them on time. So what we did instead of throwing them out before it got expired because we can't use them all, we donated mostly on them to long-term facilities here. My question is, what will be my charging for that one? Will it be considered as loss as well?
Yeah, yeah. So if you spent, $500 on those goods that now can't be sold, and if you donated them, you're just going to expense $500.
Yeah, it's the same I think when you are disposing it because there's an option on Seller Central that if you don't want to send it back to you, you dispose them. So
Yeah.
that's considered as loss, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a cost for the Wave and QuickBooks training? What do you mean
Yeah.
there is?
Our training, yeah, we do.
Oh, do you do
So
training for Wave and QuickBooks?
mhm, yeah, yeah. I have a couple of bookkeepers. One's actually a CPA that she will do a Zoom call with the client. You'll have to have your account set up, but yeah, our fee is 125 for the hour.
Okay, so that's good to know. Maybe you can share the link as well on that, like where they can sign up, or how can they, maybe they need to contact your office for that? Because I didn't know that you
Yeah,
have
so
that
I mean, just
service.
an email asking for the training, and they would get that. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. We're gonna share the information of Carmela later on. At the end of this video, I will ask her on how she can be contacted. Okay, any returns from the Amazon due to customer damage, can we report that as a loss?
Yeah.
Yes. How to determine
Yeah.
if the business is already earning or not? Is there a report to see that?
No, that's your bookkeeping. So
Yes.
unless you do your bookkeep, because you can say that your sales are, let's say, 30,000, your Amazon fees are about, 40% of that. And you might be thinking, oh, I'm making money. But once you factor in all these other expenses, you might actually be losing money. So bookkeeping is really important for that.
Okay, thank you. So if I bought inventory in 2024 and had sales in 2024 but didn't receive any money from Amazon until 2025, do I have to do anything with 2024 taxes?
So if you're a sole prop, then what I would do is put in that's your beginning inventory. So you'd have to record that and you wouldn't record anything else if you didn't have any other expenses. So I yes, you would have to at least do some type of tax return for that.
If you're a corporation?
If you're a corporation, then that becomes an asset. So you still have to report it, right? Because now you have an asset and you have to fill out the balance sheet in the tax return. So
Mm-hmm.
you do still. Yeah.
Okay, so Lindsay's asking, how do we pay ourselves in the corporation?
Okay. There's two ways. There's only two ways for a shareholder, either a salary or dividends. So if you want to do the salary, right, at the end of the year, you get a T4, but every month you have to remember that by the 15th of every month, you have to remit the payroll taxes on that salary. And then when you file in April, you don't have to pay tax because your corporation paid it on your behalf. If you're paying yourself dividends, you can do straight transfers into your bank account, but you have to put away for tax because in April you have to pay income tax on that. So those are the only two ways that shareholders can get paid.
Mm-hmm. But is there an advantage of doing the dividend instead, like as compared to salary?
Yeah, so there's an advantage because it gets taxed differently, the dividend. So if you don't need to really show any income for like a mortgage application or loans, then doing a dividend is easy to do. Um, but the salary at least takes care of your payroll, the tax. So you get your T4, you do your personal tax return, you might get a refund depending on your situation. But all your taxes have been paid. With a dividend, my clients tend to forget that in April they're going to get taxed on it and they didn't put away the money. So while the dividend is easy to administer, right, because you just do straight e-transfers, into your bank account, it can be difficult if you don't put the money away for tax. And the salary is the opposite, right? Every month you have to send in this remittance to CRA and pay the tax. But when you do your personal tax return, it's all done. It's all taken care of for you. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Ron is asking, do promotional fees count as marketing expense? Promotional fees, I guess this is for people who's doing private label. So for example, let's just example, Okay, they pay the influencer to market their
Oh,
product.
right.
Is that considered
Sure.
as marketing
Yes,
expense? Okay.
absolutely.
So number two is delivery chargers for sending shipment to Amazon or receiving shipment from Canadian Tire. Where do they stand as a write-off of or expense towards doing the business?
Yes, so that's a business expense.
That's a so is that considered I maybe he's asking about what type of category he needs to put it in?
Oh, I mean, that would be shipping.
Shipping.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
as a
Freight and shipping. Mhm.
oh, okay, sorry. As a in QuickBook, there are few receipts which are in review and are asking to create expense from receipts which are in review. What's that? Sorry. In QuickBooks, there are few receipts which are in review and are asking to create expense from receipt. What should be done in such cases because I cannot wait until the end of the year to resolve such? I'm not sure what this I'm not good with QuickBooks.
So what I think is, so there's receipts that have been uploaded into QuickBooks, and
Mm-hmm.
now you want to create the expense because uploading the receipts is one step, but then you have to categorize it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I don't know exactly what the question is, but yeah, I
Okay, so it says um
if they're valid expenses, then we need to create the expense in order to have it appear on your profit and loss statement.
yeah, it seemed like he wants so it says like in QuickBooks there are a few receipts which are in review and are asking to create expense from the receipts. So maybe like you need to categorize them in order for them to be
Hmm.
able to be out of the review section, right? You don't need to wait for a year for
Right.
you to do this. I think you can do it
Yeah.
all the time. That's what I understand from the question.
Hmm.
Okay. Another will the template also be emailed out? Yes, everything that Carmela will be sharing after this live, I will be sharing to you guys via email for my students. I will post it as well on our own Facebook group so that you can have all the access to that. So what do I need to print from Seller Central to send it to my accountant for tax purposes? So as
So
I've
that
said, some I have a video in my YouTube channel. Check it out. It has all the list of what you need to pull out and then the step-by-step guide on how to pull it out on your Seller Central. So I'll send the link as well on the email so that you guys can have it. So, okay, thanks. Thank you for sharing your template. PC Optimum credit card do not connect with QBO, so with QuickBooks. How to manage those receipts and how to make things easier at the end of the year. I guess manual is the way to go, right?
that's it. I mean, again, I've been doing this for 23 years and old school is always the best. That's just me. But yeah, QuickBooks won't accept certain cards. So the only way is to do it manually. There's no other way to do it.
Okay. Thank you. We're gonna go a bit faster because there's still 26 questions to go. And hopefully,
Wow, okay.
yeah, everybody wants to
All
know.
right.
Like this is their chance to
That's
ask you
okay. I
as
like
much question.
questions.
Yeah, we learn a lot from you, Carmela. So thank you for sharing your
Thank you.
knowledge to us. So please explain point number 4. Do we need to pay taxes from gross income or net income? Other business pay taxes after excluding all the expense.
Right. So that's a good question. So yes, you have to report your gross sales, but from the gross sales, you deduct your expenses. And that's so your net, so net profit is what you would pay tax on. But you're required to report your sales gross amount.
Thank you. So, hi, I'm from Alberta and selling only in Canada. What are the reports needed for sole proprietorship tax filing? I have not registered for GST, HST. So, again, I think there's no
Yeah.
difference, right? So, whatever I put in that video for getting all the reports, it's exactly the same thing that you will
Yeah.
take from the seller central if you are sole proprietor. So how to categorize few receipts if we do not know where to put them or categorize in QBO. So I guess you need to do some sort of training, correct, Carmela?
Yeah, so I mean, your fuel receipts would be categorized as fuel expense. But, depends. Did you pay it out of your bank account? Did you pay it credit card? Did you pay it cash? Right? So there's a journal entry for each of those, and it's different. So how you paid it will affect it.
I have a question, Carmela. Are you willing,
Yeah.
or maybe your bookkeeper is willing, maybe people can pay for it. We can do a mastermind on how to do like QuickBook training or something like that live, maybe. Maybe I'll talk to Carmela about that, see if she's
Yes.
willing. So that it's a one-time,
Right.
time training webinar that they can do, because I myself are gonna be interested with that, because it's kind of hard, like especially for those who didn't make that much money yet and they really want to be also on top of their business. Maybe learning like QBO training, like 1 hour
Mhm.
or something, is really an amazing way for us to help them as well, right? Okay.
Okay.
Do we need to do anything if sales took place in a different province with a different tax rate? Will it affect us? So,
Yes. So, as a Canadian business, if you sell in any province in Canada, so if you're in Ontario and you sell in BC, everything has to get reported on your tax return, whatever you make in Canada. And obviously, like, Canada wants to know basically all the sources of income. So if you make money in Canada, in the US, in the UK, all of that has to go onto your tax return.
okay. In Manitoba, we have provincial sales tax 7% as well as GST. Would you just include this 7% on the cost of goods, or is there any way to get back this 7%?
Yeah, so there is a way to get it back. Saskatchewan and Manitoba have this ability where you have to apply to your provincial government, the finance department. But basically, if you buy goods in your province that you pay PST on, you can get that PST back, but you have to make a request. So that's important because a lot of other BC and Quebec don't have that, I don't think. So
Okay.
if you're in Saskatchewan or Manitoba, yeah.
But with that, what are the responsibility? What once they sign up for that, do they need to also file every year with that?
So I thought I understood that she or they paid tax on goods,
Yes.
and so you can get it back. So that's what of course, would want you to do.
Mm-hmm.
So you apply to get this back. But in the meantime, so let's say you've made a purchase and you paid the PST and the GST. So the GST gets recorded as GST, the
Mm-hmm.
ITC, but the PST would get recorded as well. And when you receive the money back from the government, then you put it against that account.
I see.
Right. So
Okay.
I wouldn't, in that situation, I wouldn't include it in my cost of good calculation because
Okay.
you're getting it back. If you weren't getting it back, then it would become part of your cost of goods.
Yeah. Okay. So can you take a bit what to remit for GST, HST? Is that paying CRA all the taxes charged to clients less whatever sales tax we paid if sole prop and gross sales over 30K?
Yes, that's right. So GST, HST is basically the sales tax that are charged to the customer less the sales tax that you paid out on your business expenses.
Yeah. So if you are selling actually in the US, you will get refund because
Yeah.
they're not charging, right?
There's no sales tax, Canadian sales tax charge.
Yeah. Yeah, because the GST, even the office expense, everything that you had aside from your inventory, you get it back, right?
Oh, but even the inventory.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like aside from that, because I that's for sure you're
Oh,
gonna
right.
get it back. But aside from
Yes.
that, we will get GST back for all other expenses,
All your
right?
other expenses. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I do a full-time job than Amazon selling. Last year, I did not have insurance from my company, hence had to pay from my pocket. Can I show these expense on taxes? I don't think that insurance is
Which
included.
which
So,
insurance?
I guess maybe personal insurance,
No. So if you had to buy insurance for your business, for your Amazon business, then yes. But if it's insurance that's personal, then you can't expense that in the
yeah,
business.
I think what they mean is, you know how we get insurance from, usually if you work for a company, they give you extra insurance for like dental and other things.
Oh,
And
right.
I think
Okay.
he got that on his own pocket, like he decided to have one
Right.
from his own pocket. Is it considered as expense in Amazon business?
So it's not an expense, but you can claim that under your medical expenses in your personal tax return.
Personal, yeah. So my inventory got lost in transit. That was a big loss for me. How to go about taxes here? So basically, that's considered as loss because it's
That's a loss. Yeah.
right as part of the
Yep.
expense. That's loss. Okay.
Exactly.
Let me see. I am in Ontario. If I sell in BC, do I need to record the tax?
Um, I'm not sure what
Mm,
tax.
I think maybe because maybe what he meant is, so he's in Ontario and he sold something in BC, like
Okay.
that he need to include that as part of the tax like return. That's from what I understand.
Yeah.
Of
So, I mean, if
course.
it has to do with sales tax, then yes, of course, the sales tax has to be charged to BC, the BC rate. But if it's income tax, then yes, the sale has to be recorded on your income tax return.
Yeah. So who is the cross-border CPA tax guy? Hi, Robert. It's Mohammed Akif. If you want, you can look at the video. I interviewed him 2 times already. So you can watch that video and he talks deeply on cross-border taxes. So I am not registered for HST. I'm not sure what it is already. Can you claim house repairs for a home expense, for example, a new roof?
No. And the
No.
reason why is that roof has to, like, it's not just for your office, it's for your entire house. And I would advise against, because a roof is not an expense. I mean, yes, it's an expense because it's an expense to our pocket, but in CRA's eyes, it's not an expense. It's a capital asset. And, claiming capital assets on your tax return for business purposes can, um, you run the risk of capital gains when you sell your house. So your principal residence, which is usually not taxable, a portion of it could be taxable. So I would say no.
Mm-hmm. Okay, in case of Amazon US payouts in USD for tax purposes, is it easier to connect a US-based bank account such as Pioneer or to connect a Canadian bank account in USD? So,
I guess to QuickBooks, is that
uh,
um,
I think what they meant is like which is better? Is it okay to go, so there's usually when you're selling in the US you can have like companies like Pioneer, so I use Loop, other Wise, because for
mhm,
they think it's
mhm.
better for conversion rate. So is it better to use that, or Canadian bank account in USD is already okay as well?
Yes, I mean, you have to just do the research in terms of the exchange rates, right? I mean,
Y-
that's where it all comes down to.
Yes,
Because either one for bookkeeping and tax purposes are fine.
it doesn't matter, right? So it's just more on like which one have more advantage. Nasrat, I did also an interview with a guy from Loop, and I think I explained there like
Mm,
why is it more advantageous to have this kind of companies. So a lot of times, like for example, before when I was starting, I know that the charges of RBC before for USD is so expensive if it's business.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the
Yeah.
reason why I end up not getting them. So you need to do your research on that. So if doing Amazon part-time, how do you determine percentage allocation such as rent, property tax, etc.?
Right. So you'll have to figure out what your how much space in your home you're using for business. So the quick and easy way is to, if you're using one room, and it has to be dedicated, right? It can't be your kitchen table. It has to be like a room. So one room out of, 8 rooms in the house, you just do the math and you get the percentage.
Yeah.
And then that percentage gets applied to your home expenses.
Yeah. So no matter if it's full-time, part-time, if you dedicate one space in your house, then that's considered as what's gonna be for expense
Correct.
for your business.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm located in BC and I have registered PST number and I entered PST number in Seller Central, but I believe Amazon still remitted the PST. I would like to know if I can claim back the PST I paid for OARA like HST and GST. Thanks.
No, that's not available in BC.
Okay, so no.
No.
Okay, so what are the important documents to get from Amazon platform for tax purposes? Again, I already said that. Check my YouTube channel. I have a recent video on that, on how to pull out all the reports in your Seller Central account. I'm selling on both Canada and US. Is it okay if I work with you for Canadian marketplace and work with somebody else in the US marketplace? Should I just stick to one accountant only?
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice to have one person deal with everything. But just remember that the US and the Canadian has to be reported on the Canadian tax return, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Unless I guess that they have a company in the US, like registered in the US, like a
Right.
LLC or
That,
corporation, then that's
right.
gonna be
That's
separate. But
different.
yeah, but if it's
Yeah.
just like you're just selling there, but everything needs to, like, your company is actually based in Canada. I'm doing that with Carmela, everything
Mhm.
with her, so she can do everything on that. Is the course tax deductible?
Yes.
Yes, so thanks for clarifying. Perfect, Cheryl. I will check your YouTube channel. Okay. Please explain again. If you have entered your corporation business number on Amazon but didn't set the tax code for your products, what will happen?
So it's not the corporation number, because the corporation does have a number, but that has nothing to do with tax. It's your GST number, your HST number. So it's a 9-digit number. So if you have not entered the HST number or your GST number into the tax settings, or if you've entered it but didn't, fix your product tax codes, what can happen is Amazon is not remitting to you. So they're not on your payouts. They're not giving you the GST, the HST that they collected, right? Because remember, as a GST registrant, you have to report and pay CRA, not Amazon. So if Amazon is not charging properly or is not collecting or is actually collecting and remitting it because it doesn't know, Amazon doesn't know that.
Wait a second.
Oops.
Oh, hold a second. So sorry. Okay.
That's okay.
Okay, I think it's good. Sorry.
Okay. So, in either case, if you're not being paid out the GST or the HST on the sales, then if you're audited, and you almost for sure will be audited, because when you're filling out your sales tax.
Go there.
Okay. Aureen, if you can please turn off your microphone. I think it keeps on turning on and it's disrupting the webinar, please. Thank you. Okay. Sorry, Carmela.
Okay. So when you're reporting your sales tax that you collected, so you've got your the income, so your gross sales is what you report. Then you need to report what GST or HST did you collect on those sales. If you didn't collect anything, if Amazon didn't collect on your behalf, if Amazon collected and remitted the tax, you have to put zero on that line. And as soon as you have Canadian sales and zero HST collected, CRA is going to call you. And once you go through that review or that audit, you're going to have to pay it out of pocket.
Mhm. Okay, I hope that's clear. Okay, so Robert is asking, what do you suggest to use or do for bookkeeping for Amazon? QuickBooks, anything else? What else do you suggest aside from QuickBooks, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, we find that QuickBooks does whatever we need it to do. And again, for corporations, as long as it's providing a balance sheet and an income statement, um, Wave is a good choice as well. So those are the two we use.
Mm-hmm. And as long as you have those software, you don't need any extra things that you need to use.
No, not for bookkeeping, accounting, not tax. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I only resell used books, mostly that I buy from thrift store. I have receipts that indicate that I may have spent 60 with some books at 3, some 2, and some are 1. Earlier, it sounded I could only expense the purchase of books as I sell them, but I don't know how much I spent to each specific book. Did I misinterpret something, or do I now have a problem since I have more than 1,000 books?
Yeah, that's a good I mean, whether it's books or anything else really that you're selling, if you haven't sold them yet, so if they're sitting in a warehouse, Amazon warehouse, you actually have to, I mean, you can give it sort of an average price. It's the cost that you need to add to it. If you don't know every single book, and I can see how crazy that would be, I would just try and sort of guesstimate, right? Because writing something down is better than not. So if you know that's, these ranges of books cost you 50 cents to $1.50, just do an average. If you're able
Mm-hmm.
to at least do that, because you can get a list, the inventory list, you can download it from Amazon, and then you would just have to go into the spreadsheet and allocate a cost. An
Yeah.
average cost would be okay.
One thing that I would suggest is I usually customize my SKU. Okay, so that's one thing that maybe
Oh,
you should start doing. So you can put
right.
the price, you say, like, for example, whatever you bought it in Tali, say, so TAL, and then you can put one for $1 or something. So when you are doing your taxes, maybe
Yeah,
you can look at the SKU, and then you would know how much it cost when you purchase it. That would solve the issue if
that's
you really
smart.
want to be very detailed on that. That's what
Right. Yeah.
I do with all my, because long time ago they barely changed the prices, right? But with the inflation now, cost of goods is
Everything is,
constantly
yeah,
changing, so it's hard to keep track of, like, because replenishable is like that. But with books, I think it's a one time buy purchase, so then you can really know that that's the price of that. That's what I
right.
would do.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so
smart.
Tej, if I have a corporation and created sub trade entity under that corporation for Amazon, what type of return is required?
It's a corporate return.
Corporate return. Okay, so Marielle, from Marielle, in terms of paying ourselves once the business makes money, are the rules for a general partnership the same as a sole proprietor?
Yeah, so if you're a partnership, so what happens is uh, you've got your income and your expenses, right? So let's say you have a net profit of $10,000. So basically, if the partnership is a 50-50 partnership, you each have to report $5,000 on your tax return, and it's the same schedule as your sole proprietorship would fill out.
Mm-hmm. So having said that, if, for example, me and my husband makes, big amount of money already, like, would you recommend to just do sole proprietor instead of partnership? So for tax purposes?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. Yeah. You have to look at your personal finances first, right? To see if it makes sense.
Thank you for that. So for things like disposal fees for Amazon, do we need to record them separately in QuickBooks, or can they be covered under general Amazon selling fees?
Yeah, we usually just do Amazon selling fees. We don't go into the detail because that's already on a different report.
Okay, so if I buy a new MacBook used for business, can I expense that right away or split into how many years?
Yeah, so if it's used solely for your business, that's a capital asset and that gets depreciated over time. So
Oh.
you wouldn't expense the $2,000 that you paid the MacBook. You would actually expense the amortization on it every year.
Okay. So since we sell our products for a higher price than we bought it, that means the GST we collect from the customer is always higher than the GST we paid on the goods. Does this mean that clients more often owe GST at the end of the year instead of getting money back, or do other business expense often contribute to a lot to ITCs?
Yeah, so that's exactly it, right? So if you're Canadian and you're selling only in Canada, of course that situation's kind of always going to apply. But sometimes I have clients who, especially in gearing up for quarter 4, they buy a whole, ton of product. So for that particular quarter, their ITCs, so what they paid out in expenses, is higher. Then once the next quarter gets done, it kind of levels out. But most of the time, if you're selling taxable goods, you're going to have to pay. Yeah.
So if I get Costco, MasterCard, and other Visa with fee, is that tax deductible? So
The
using it
fees,
solely,
yeah,
yeah, solely for
yeah.
the business. Yes. Okay. So once I'm registered with GST, Amazon charges the GST on my sales and send me the tax amount for me to remit to CRA. Yes, that's what's gonna happen. So do you think it's okay USD to buy Canadian dollars inventory because there is zero FX? Will it cause the bookkeeping more complicated? Oh, so it's saying that maybe it's for US dollar credit card, to just use USD credit card to buy
Yeah.
Canadian products so that it's zero FX fees. So will it cost bookkeeping more complicated, or it doesn't matter?
No, it shouldn't. As long as you're aware of it or your bookkeeper is aware, that it shouldn't be any different.
Yeah. I have a question. I never asked this to you, but I know that in the US, this is a practice where people would buy gift cards for cheap and then they would use it to buy inventory. So the charges in the
Mhm.
credit card is actually to purchase the card, but it won't show in the statement that we purchased on this particular for example, Walmart, because they use the gift card, right?
Right,
And I,
right.
I was afraid, I've heard that it complicates taxes, but in your opinion, like, is this okay, or it really like takes a lot of toll, like you're gonna end up paying a lot in bookkeeping because of the way it's set up, if we're gonna do it in
Yeah,
Canada?
because if you buy a $500 gift card, where are you recording that gift card, right? Generally speaking, we record it as, a gift because
Mm-hmm.
you're going to gift
Yeah.
this card. But if you bought $500,000 worth of, I don't know, cups to sell,
Mm-hmm.
how are we, that's got to go into inventory, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
500, you have to make sure that your bookkeeping is nice and clean and you've got an audit trail there, because if CRA audits you, they want to see that you've used that card to buy 500 cups. So I think you buy the gift card, you have one receipt, but when you use it to buy 500 cups, it'll show that you've used a gift card to pay for it.
Yeah.
So as long as, the audit trail is clean, I think it should be fine. But you do have to let your bookkeeper know, because otherwise, if she sees $500 gift card, it's going to, gifts, right?
Okay.
And so as an e-commerce business, we don't give a lot of gifts out, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
like a regular business that you have to kind of like wine and dine people, right?
Yeah.
To get business. So Yeah,
So
you
it's
just have to
possible that,
make it clear.
yeah, so it's possible that CRA won't consider that as expense if you didn't say it clearly.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so good to know. But would you recommend that or no? Or too much for
No, I
bookkeeping?
mean it's fine as long as you know the paperwork is clean. That's all.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So um let me see. Oh, I got messed up with my questions. Hold a second, sorry. Okay. Deductible. Sorry, I moved my cursor a bit and now my questions are like messed up. Okay.
Uh,
Hi Carmela, another question. In our business credit card billing, we have charges for sometimes the max out charges or service charge will be write off too, right? So maybe
yes.
for example, they end up getting charged because they max out on it. That's considered
Hmm.
as a write off?
Yeah, that's an
Okay.
expense.
As a beginner, what's your recommendation ultimately to be a sole proprietor or registered company advantage in a long run, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, that question really depends on what your personal financial situation is, right? Generally speaking, if you have a full-time job and you're close to, you know, like 80, 90, $100,000 T4, it might be better for you to start a corporation, right? So that you can keep it separate. But, you know, if you have a spouse who doesn't work, then maybe they can open a sole prop in their name, right? So it really depends on your personal situation.
Mm-hmm. So how do you know if Amazon is deducting the taxes that it show on your report?
Yeah, so the quick way that we check, um, not whether they're doing the right tax, but whether they are charging and remitting the tax to you. Your sales summary at the bottom right will show tax. And if there's a number there in bold, then they're doing something. So they know they've recognized that you have an HST number. Whether they're doing the correct or charging the correct amount of tax, you have to actually dig deeper and go into the CSV file. And that will actually show you clearly whether they're deducting the right or whether they're charging the right sales tax.
Mm-hmm. For selling in both countries, US and Canada, do we have to have a cross-border accountant or no need?
You don't have to have a cross-border accountant, but if you have to file any IRS forms, then you need to find someone who can do that for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. If we voluntarily registered for a GST HST number, but have not started selling, which product tax code we pick on Amazon Seller Central?
yeah, you would still have to put in your HST number and choose depends if it's a taxable item. So if it's taxable, so it's the AGEN tax or AGEN no tax. So you still have to choose that, even though you haven't sold anything.
Is there a particular place we can find this list of products where which one are taxable and not taxable? Because I actually use Chat
Yeah,
GPT on this one because I also want to have more details, and it's crazy how, like, for example, juice, if it's 100% it's non-taxable, but then if it's like less than this percentage it's taxable. So it's quite confusing actually. Like, do you
it
have any
is confusing.
recommendation?
Well, the CRA website will have that. I don't know if it goes into that kind of detail, but what I normally do is if you pay tax on it, so let's say you bought the groceries and you paid tax on it, when you resell it, you have to charge tax, right? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
taxable.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't pay it when you purchase the goods, then it's not taxable,
Yeah, the only issue
right?
is like if you bought so many different things and we don't know which one is tax and which
I
one
think,
is not.
don't they put a certain a notation near the item, whether it's taxable or not?
I'm not sure. Maybe it depends on the store.
Yeah,
Possible, but
they should because otherwise, like that. you just go into a store and they're like, oh, we'll charge you like $50 of GST, and you have no idea which items. But yeah, check the receipts. I mean, I know way back when there used to be like a little T beside it for taxable. I don't know what if
Yeah.
they do that
I
now.
actually did not pay attention to that. Like, yeah. So, okay. If let me see. If Amazon is collecting and remitting the HST on our behalf, why do we need to register for it? Is it required at some point?
Yes, so you don't have to register until you reach the 30,000 sales, that threshold. So at that point, you don't have a choice whether to let Amazon collect it for you. You have to register.
So
And
it's
that would
required by
be,
law.
yeah, and that's the 30,000 worldwide sales, not just
Mhm.
Canadian sales.
Yeah. So you are required after 30,000, you need to remit your own sales tax
That's right.
already. So do we have to define the percentage of a partnership? So for example, 60, 40, is that
Yeah.
required? Can,
Well, it is required in your tax return,
okay,
right?
can this ratio change each year? Is that possible?
Uh, well, it could. So let's say you start off a partnership and really it's like 70-30 because the 30% they have a full-time job, so they can't, be part of the partnership 100% of the time. Then you have a 70-30. And maybe the next year they're able to put 50% in. So then you're a 50-50. I wouldn't advise changing it too much because that could flag the return.
Okay, thank you. Param just said, thank you so much, Carmela, for detailed information on taxes. It was the best webinar. Okay,
Oh,
what
you're
documents would I
welcome.
need? What documents would I need to prepare for business expense like mortgage, payment, property tax, hydro bill, phone plan bill? Okay, so maybe I can share this. Like I'm gonna try to come up with a list of things that I guess Carmela asked me to prepare as well, so that you guys can have sort of list of what are deductible for housing and stuff like that. I can
Oh, you'll
come up.
actually, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but the template that I give you, the Excel
Okay.
template, will have it listed.
Wow, perfect. Yay. So we have that covered, guys. So Carmela is
Yeah, we
really
we try and make
generous.
it as easy as possible for my clients.
Yeah, thank you so much for everything. So how and where can we find out if Amazon had collected HST and gave it to you, or they have remitted without giving it to you? It would be in the summary report, right?
Yeah, that'll give you an indication. And then you can actually look at your payout statements because that should indicate what they're paying out to you.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
basically in the report with the payments, if you download the Excel file, it will show like which how much did they pay you for that, correct?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, I have a very detailed report on how to download all the reports. You can go to that video and just follow the step by step on how to do it. With the tax relief ending, do we need to change the code back to taxable for toys? Of course, yes, right?
Yeah. Wasn't that fun?
Oh my God.
That was
Especially for
awful.
arbitrage people, we have so much, right? That's
Well, and a little bit more on that note, because that presents a bit of a nightmare for bookkeepers, right? Because something that was normally taxable, now you didn't pay the tax, or where you purchased it from, because there were some companies that were not going to make any changes at all, right? So you have to be very careful from December 14 to February 15, very clean books. Because I have a feeling that CRA is going to do a little bit of auditing there.
wow. So I guess you're gonna have a lot of work for your client this year.
Yeah, as soon as they announced it, I'm like, I get why, what the intention is, but it's a bit of a nightmare for bookkeepers.
Yeah. Okay. So a few more questions. So hi, Carmela. I have a full-time job earning below 50K when not doing overtimes, and my husband is above 100K end of the year. Does my decision cause not hold a second because it's being hidden. Cause not we are on a corporation just with help my husband to ease off his taxes. Will that really help us on his taxes lower down? Okay, let me read it again. I have a
Yeah.
full-time job earning below 50K when not doing overtimes, and my husband is above 100 end of the year. Does my decision cause now we are on a corporation just will help my husband to ease on off his taxes? Will that really help us on his taxes to lower down? So basically, I think I'm assuming April that your husband is also in the corporation, correct? So asking if because they have corporation, they're making money on Amazon now, will it help to lower um the husband's income or tax
Right.
payable?
So a corporation doesn't affect personal tax at all, right? So if your husband and yourself are shareholders in the corporation, you'll have to be very careful when you're using corporate funds to pay for personal. So like if you're going to pay yourself. So as shareholders, if you pay yourself dividends, then you both have to take out the dividends and the same amount. So if he's at the higher tax bracket and you're going to pay dividends, you're actually going to increase his taxes, right? And not decrease them. So the only way, let's say that, you could be paid out of that corporation is through a salary. So then you can choose not to pay your husband and to pay yourself so that your 50K, it will increase a bit, but if you take out $20,000 as a salary, then you report 70,000, right? So yeah, you just have to be very careful how you pay yourself because you could end up increasing his taxes rather than, leaving them alone.
Okay. I think because a lot of information out there, as you said, you need to be careful. They
Yeah.
always talk about like, oh, having a business will lower your taxes. I just saw one video, I think 2 days ago about that, that's saying like how to save money for this tax season, right? And then one of them is like, if you have a business, it can lower your taxes, but they don't know if it's a corporation or sole proprietor. I think with sole
Right.
proprietor, right? Probably, but with corporation, if you end up being corporation, not at
Yeah, with a
all.
corporation, absolutely not. But with a sole proprietorship, so if you're making, let's say, the 100K, but then you've got a sole prop that's got a loss of 20,000, that reduces your taxes. Like you'll get a refund, right? But you have to be careful. You can't claim a loss in a sole prop, 4, 5, 6, 7 years in a row. The government will actually come and take a closer look.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Okay, I look it up in Manitoba. We can get a PST, also called RST number.
Yeah.
Hold a second because it's kind of hard to read. Okay. RST number to your suppliers to purchase goods of or services for resale exempt from RST. Is this even worth doing? Because I don't see how you can provide this number if you were doing OA. Do most people in Manitoba, Saskatchewan just pay the PST?
Yeah, so if let's say you're doing RA or OA and you're going to Walmart, well, yeah, presenting them your RST number, I don't believe they're going to accept it. But what you can do, you can make a request to the Manitoba government or the Saskatchewan government to get a refund of that PST. So it is worth, yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much on that one. Kenny, if you still have questions, just let me know. So if I'm filing my GST yearly, will it be the same at the same time I'm doing my personal income tax in April, or for GST, it's ending December? Thanks.
Yeah, so if you're a sole proprietorship, um, the majority of HST filings are due by June 15. But if you owe HST, you have to make the payment by April 30th. So your filing can be June 15, but your payment has to be April 30th.
Okay, thanks. I got HST number but haven't registered it in tax code section of Amazon. Is Amazon still collecting and remitting HST for me in this case?
They likely are. Whether they're, I mean, we can tell whether they're collecting, right? We'll never ever really know if they're remitting because we don't have access to those records. But yes, they are, but they shouldn't be remitting on your behalf because you're registered.
So you need to right away put your HST number, GST HST number in the seller central, or else. So what can happen if like they collected, they collected he already have the number, they collected, what will happen with that?
So if they've collected on his behalf, they're going to remit it to CRA. They're going to pay CRA. But like I said before, when he does his HST return, he's going to note 0 HST collected. And then that's going to attract CRA to come in and take a closer look. And so, he could be out of pocket. We've had some instances where Amazon was collecting the proper tax, but remitting it on seller's behalf. We were able to prove that they were collecting. So then the auditor, understood and the client wasn't out of pocket. So you have to be careful. If you do get into an audit, you have to be careful what kind of information you provide to CRA.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So when entering things like phone bills in QuickBook and adjusting for personal use, how do we deal with the GST portion of the bill?
So same ways, if let's say it's $100 expense for telephone, but only 50% is deductible. So 50% is personal use and 50 is business. Then that means 50% of the GST that you paid has to be reversed.
Okay, so basically whatever is the percentage, that's what you're going to use also for GST.
Correct.
Okay, so last one questions. What's the yearly cost for what is this? Okay, for an accountant to file tax. For an accountant, maybe?
Accountant, yeah, maybe. So for sole proprietorships, our range is between $450 to around $870. And that, of course, depends on how busy, like the amount of activity. Did you just start, 2 months ago? So, the price will vary, but that's generally the range. Most of them will fall within the $600 to $700 range. For corporations, for corporate tax and HST filings, it's about $2,100. And then if you need financial statements, you can go up to like $2,700, depending on the activity, could be $3,000. So that's for the year.
Okay, so you are saying before, okay? So before we end this really good webinar, I know, Carmela, you said about the 30-minute call. Is this available for new possible clients? If they want to be your clients, are you okay of them calling you for 30 minutes for consultation for free?
I get requests all the time. And we book the 30-minute call. You can ask the questions that you need. So yeah, there's no obligation. You don't have to become a client. Generally, most people do once they chat. But
and how can they contact you? Like email, website, where can they contact
you? Email's the easiest, I think, because then I don't lose track. I do have some people messaging on Facebook, or some people actually text me. Too many areas for me to keep track of messages, so I don't like to miss anything. So if you email me, then I'll be sure to reply.
Would you mind sharing your email address so they would know? And I'm also going to write it down in the description below.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you just want me to say, so it's Carmela, CARMELA at carmelaperillo.com. So basically that's my website, right? So on my website, carmelaperillo.com, and Perillo is spelled Pillo. Oh, it's right there. See, it's right there.
There you go. And also, Carmela, I know that you promised me that anybody that I would recommend, you will give them some sort of percentage. What should we
Yeah,
do? Like, because there's so many who
yes.
attended right now, maybe they're interested, maybe they can get the discount.
Yeah, for sure. So usually it's a 15% discount on the first year. So you just have to let me know that
Yeah.
that's kind of, where you've come from, right? You
Yeah,
can
so
just
just
mention
tell,
Cheryl's name.
yes. So
Yeah,
just tell them, tell Carmela in the email, I'm recommended by Sheryl, so you get the
yeah.
15% off. And then if Carmela forgets, remind her again.
Yes,
Right?
please,
Yeah,
please,
yeah.
especially during the busy time. Yes,
Yeah,
remind me.
because so many clients. So and also guys, well it's not yet like well it's starting to get busy. Contact Carmela right away because she might not be able to accommodate a lot. Um
Yeah,
she's very helpful in trying to accommodate everything, but with like I think I have 107 signups today. Who knows who will need
yeah,
help. So
that's a
make sure
lot.
that yeah make sure that you contact her right away. Okay. What was
Yeah,
again the 15% discount is for what exactly? If you want Carmela to become your Amazon or your accountant, when you message her, email her that you want to have a meeting with her for like 30 minutes, or you even if not meeting, if you say okay I want you to be my accountant, mention my name. I was recommended by Sheryl so that you can get the 15% off your price. So for example, she's going to charge you
right.
700 or 400 in the first year of tax filing minus
Yeah,
15%. That's what you're going to get. Okay. So thank
yeah.
you so
Because the
much, guys.
30
And yes,
the
sorry.
30-minute call is free. I just want to, yeah,
Yeah.
that's free. And the 15% applies to when you engage our services.
Wow, Carmela is very generous with her time as well. So take advantage of that. Again, Carmela, thank you so much for
Thank
allowing
you.
us to get your, have your precious time to be with us. I know like it's more than 30 minutes over. So thank you so much
Oh,
and
that's
have a good
okay.
night, guys.